Okay, so today we're going to tell you a story. It's about a case that really shook the K-pop world back in the day, and honestly, it still echoes now.
It does. We're talking about the death of Kim Sung Jae, a young star, incredibly popular, right on the cusp of, well, everything.
This was back in 1995. He just had his massive solo debut, like, the day before.
And then he was found dead in his hotel room. Just like that.
So, what we want to do today is try and piece together what happened. Look at the facts we know from the sources, the investigation, or lack thereof sometimes.
Right, and the trial and just why this thing still feels so, well, unfinished, almost 30 years later.
It really is like a puzzle with some crucial pieces just missing from the get-go.
And it's a story that, really lays bare how evidence can be so fragile and what happens when those first steps in an investigation go wrong.
We're using accounts from the time, reports, to try and build that picture for you. The timeline, who was involved, the evidence.
Or sometimes the lack of evidence, which is a huge part of the story. And then the legal battles, the public reaction. It was intense.
It's a really compelling story, but deeply tragic too. Lots of twists.
Definitely. And to really get the weight of it, you need to understand who Kim Sung Jae was.
Okay.
Born in Seoul, 1972. He actually had quite a privileged background, spent time internationally. Kindergarten in England.
Wow, really?
Yeah, camps in Europe, Japan. Schooled in Tokyo for a bit before coming back to Korea for high school and university. Studied tourism, interestingly.
Oh, and he had a younger brother too, right? Sunwook.
Yes, who apparently really looked up to him, shared that dream of being a singer.
But Kim Sung Jae's passion was performance. He started as a backup dancer.
Exactly. For a big name at the time, Hyun Jin Young. And that's where he connected with Lee Hyun Do.
Ah, the other half of Do.
That's the one. They clicked, decided to form their own group, Do. They debuted in 93.
And Do was huge. They did something really different, mixing hip-hop with Korean sounds.
Totally groundbreaking for the time. Teenagers loved them. They were winning awards left and right. Hits like We Are, Break Off the Yoke.
6 trophies, the sources said. Massive success.
Incredible success. But it came at a cost. The schedule was apparently brutal.
Yeah.
Led to health issues. And after only about 2 years, they decided to call it quits. Their last concert was July 95.
But he wasn't done with music. Kim Sung Jae, he still wanted that solo career.
He did. And he got his shot. Which leads us right to that pivotal night.
November 19th, 1995. His solo debut. Live TV performance.
On TV, Gaio 20 performing. As I told you, you can only imagine the pressure, the excitement.
Must have been huge for him, a culmination of everything, and the performance went well.
By all accounts, yes. A success. Felt like the start of something big for him.
And he was feeling it too. There's that detail about the phone call.
Right. After the show, he called his mother, apparently just full of joy, saying, I did it, Mom. Plan to come home the next day for kimchi stew.
Oh, wow. That just makes what happened next even harder to grasp.
It really does. Puts his state of mind just hours before into sharp focus. He was happy.
So after the show, celebration time, back at the hotel.
The Grand Suite Hotel in Seoul, yeah. A gathering in his room.
Who was there?
His girlfriend, the sources referred to her as Ms. A, so we'll stick with that. Her friend, who was a dentist, his manager, and some dancers, both Korean and American.
Okay, his inner circle celebrating, and this went on until the early hours.
Reportedly until about 1 a.m. At that point, everyone else headed off to their own rooms.
Leaving just Kim Sung Jae and Ms. A.
That's the timeline given. Ms. A reportedly left his room herself later, around 3:45 a.m.
Okay, so the next morning, November 20th, he's supposed to be heading home. His manager comes to get him.
Around 6 a.m. And that's when he finds him, face down on the sofa.
Just thought he was asleep.
Initially, yeah. After a long night, maybe sleeping it off, tried to wake him, couldn't.
But then concerns started to grow.
Took a while. About 50 minutes later, so around 6:50 a.m., the manager and one of the dancers tried again. Still unresponsive.
That's when they knew something was seriously wrong.
Yeah. They called an ambulance right away.
But it was too late.
Tragically, yes. By the time paramedics arrived, Kim Sung Jae was already gone. He was just 23.
The shock must have been unbelievable. One day after his solo debut.
Devastating. And the police arrived, of course, their first look around the room.
No struggle, no weapon.
Right. So their initial thought, based on what they saw, was natural causes. Maybe, a sudden heart attack from exhaustion or something.
And this is where things started to go sideways with the investigation, isn't it? The evidence collection.
Big time. The sources point out a couple of key issues. One was the camera they used. Polaroid.
A Polaroid for a potential crime scene?
Yeah. And apparently the photos were just bad. dark, distorted, pretty useless for forensic analysis later.
And then there was the pressure for the autopsy.
Well, his mother, understandably distraught, wanted the autopsy done quickly so she could proceed with the funeral. That might have sort of rushed the initial scene processing too.
Okay, so initial assumption, natural causes, but the autopsy, that changed everything.
Completely flipped the script.
Yeah.
The medical team found something deeply disturbing.
Which was?
28 small needle marks on his right arm and upper arm.
28. Okay, that is definitely not a heart attack.
Absolutely not. They immediately tested for illegal drugs, thinking overdose maybe.
But nothing.
No illegal drugs found.
So, what was injected?
This is the really strange part. They detected Solitol 50, or Solitol 50. It's an anesthetic.
Okay.
Primarily used on animals, sometimes for animal euthanasia.
Wait, an animal anesthetic injected 28 times?
Exactly. That finding screamed, foul play. Why would this substance be in his system administered like that?
And there was something else suspicious about the location, right? The right arm.
Yes. Kim Sung Jae was right-handed. Think about it. If you were injecting yourself, especially that many times, wouldn't you use your non-dominant arm? Your left arm?
Yeah, much easier. Injecting your right arm repeatedly with your right hand would be awkward, to say the least.
Precisely. It strongly suggested someone else might have done it.
So the medical team told the police, this looks suspicious.
Their conclusion was clear. Highly suspicious death. Likely not natural. Likely not self-inflicted. This wasn't an accident or suicide.
Okay, so now the police have a potential homicide on their hands. They go back to the hotel.
But crucially, time had passed. Because they first thought it was natural causes, they hadn't secured everything properly.
Like the CCTV.
Exactly. When they finally asked the hotel for the footage weeks later, gone, overwritten. Standard procedure maybe, but devastating for the case. That footage could have shown who came and went.
And the needle, the actual injection device.
Never found.
Wow. So key evidence was just lost. What about witnesses, everyone who was in the room?
They tried to track them down. But again, that initial assumption had consequences. The 2 American backup dancers.
The ones who were there earlier.
Yeah. They'd already flown back to the U.S. The police had initially told them they weren't needed.
Oh, man. So who was left? Missy A., the girlfriend. What was her story?
She told police she stayed and talked with him until about 3, 4, 5 a.m., then left for her own room.
Did the police look into her background, given the weird drug finding?
They did. And they found something significant. Musari was a dental student.
Ah. So she'd have some knowledge of drugs, anesthetics.
Potentially, yes. That, combined with the animal anesthetic, made them look closer at her.
Did they find proof she could get this specific drug?
This became a cornerstone of the prosecution's case later. They discovered she had purchased Solitol 50.
She bought the actual drug?
Yes, along with magnesium sulfate and syringes from a veterinary hospital shortly before his death.
And she asked them to keep it quiet.
Reportedly, yes. Specifically requested they not mention the purchase.
What did she say when they confronted her with this?
She admitted buying it, but claimed it was for euthanizing an animal. Said she'd already used it and thrown the rest away. Denied it had anything to do with Kim Sung Jae.
Okay, so the police have a suspect who bought the specific unusual drug found in the victim. They needed a motive. Did they look into the relationship?
Deeply. They'd been dating about 2 years. She was 25, he was 23, and the picture that emerged was not good.
How so?
Multiple sources described it, using the word toxic, intensely jealous, possessive. That was the description of Mrs. A.
Can you give examples?
Yeah, things like getting furious if he didn't answer her calls right away, calling him constantly, like 10, 20 times a day if he was away.
Wow.
Even calling his friends or manager, demanding to know where he was, what he was doing, real controlling behavior.
And it got worse than that, didn't it? There were allegations of threats.
Very serious ones. Allegedly, she threatened to kill him with a gas gun, whatever that is, if he left her.
Good grief.
And maybe the most chilling allegation, that she once tried to strangle him with a rope while he was asleep.
That's terrifying. Was he trying to get out of this relationship?
His manager told police that, yes, Kim Sung Jae had been trying to break up with her for a while, but he was finding it really hard.
So the police theory was jealousy, possessiveness, fear of losing him as his solo career took off. That was the motive.
That was the theory they developed, yes. That his burgeoning solo success might have pushed her over the edge, fearing she'd lose control or lose him altogether.
Okay, so connecting the dots. She bought the drug, she was the last one known to be with him, and there's this alleged history of extreme jealousy and threats.
Based on all that circumstantial evidence, yes, Ms. Jae was arrested and charged with his murder.
How did the prosecution lay out their case in the first trial?
Pretty much as you'd expect. Means the drug purchase, motive, the toxic relationship, jealousy, and opportunity being the last person with him.
And the first court agreed.
It did. She was found guilty of murder, sentenced to life imprisonment.
But that wasn't the end of it. She appealed.
She did. And the sources mention her family was wealthy, had connections. They hired a top-tier legal team for the appeal.
And this is where the prosecution's case started to unravel a bit because of those earlier mistakes.
Exactly. The lack of hard physical evidence became a major problem on appeal. No needle, no leftover drug found, those useless photos, the missing CCTV. It was all circumstantial.
And some witnesses changed their stories.
Reportedly, yes. Some testimony weakened or changed during the appeal process, which further damaged the prosecution's case.
So the defense just hammered on the lack of proof.
Their core argument was reasonable doubt. They argued the prosecution simply hadn't proven beyond a reasonable doubt that she administered the drug. Too many gaps, too much uncertainty.
And they brought in experts about the drug, Solatol 50.
Yeah, that was a clever tactic. They argued that based on dosage calculations for his weight, about 75 kilos, one bottle of Solatol 50 likely wouldn't have been fatal.
Really?
It could cause unconsciousness, their experts argued, but to actually kill him would have required, quote, tens of bottles. They suggested it was improbable she could have administered that much.
So raising doubt about whether the amount she purchased could even have been the lethal dose.
Precisely. Between the lack of direct evidence and these questions about the drug's lethality in that quantity.
The appeal court overturned the conviction.
It did. And the Supreme Court ultimately upheld the appeal court's decision.
So, the final verdict.
Acquitted. Not guilty due to lack of sufficient evidence.
Which means, legally, the case is closed. Unsolved.
Legally, yes. With her acquittal and no new suspects, it remains an unsolved case in the eyes of the law.
And the initial investigation got a lot of criticism afterwards.
Oh, yeah. Newspaper articles at the time really slammed the police for fumbling the crucial early stages, not securing the CCTV, letting the American dancers leave. It basically handicapped the whole process.
How did the public take the acquittal? It must have been divisive.
Hugely divisive. A lot of people just couldn't accept it, felt the circumstantial case was strong enough. Others felt the court made the right call based on the lack of conclusive proof. It split opinion right down the middle.
What happened to Ms. Asada after all this?
Sources say she tried to disappear. Changed her name, apparently had plastic surgery, moved away. There are rumors she married a doctor, maybe opened a clinic, but it's all unconfirmed. People still try to find her, apparently. But there are legal risks with defamation laws in Korea. And meanwhile, Kim Sung Jae's family is left without answers. His friend Lee Hyun-do wrote a tribute song.
Though that caused some issues later with royalties, right?
Yeah, a separate dispute. But the core issue for the family, especially his mother and brother, was just living with the injustice, not knowing who was responsible.
His brother, Sung-wook, tried to keep his memory alive, faced some flack for selling merchandise.
He did, but he said it was part of his way of seeking truth after decades of feeling justice wasn't served. It really highlights the personal toll.
Even though the case is legally closed, people haven't let it rest. There have been attempts to revisit it.
Definitely. In 2019, a big investigative show, Unanswered Questions, announced a multi-part documentary. They claimed they had new information.
But it never aired.
No. Ms. Jae filed an injunction to stop it, citing potential damage to her reputation.
And the court agreed.
The court granted the injunction, blocking the broadcast.
Wow. How did people react to that?
A lot of public anger. People felt it was silencing potential truth. A petition to let it air got over 200,000 signatures, but it didn't change the outcome. Ms. Jae apparently threatened more lawsuits, too.
So the producers just shelved it.
The producer later explained online they were legally blocked, but they were still investigating and hoped to air it someday.
And there was another attempt more recently, MBC.
Yeah, reportedly planned for March 2023, but that also seems to have stalled, likely due to similar legal pressures.
So under Korean law, once someone's acquitted, that's pretty much it, unless something huge turns up.
Basically, yeah. You need significant, credible new evidence to even think about reopening a case like this. And finding that after so long is incredibly difficult.
So when you step back, it's just this incredibly sad story. A young star's potential wiped out, a death shrouded in suspicion, an investigation flawed from the start.
A trial that highlighted those flaws, and ultimately, no legal resolution. No closure.
And it still resonates because it's such a stark example of how things can go wrong, isn't it? How fragile justice can seem.
Absolutely. The importance of getting those first steps right in an investigation is just crystal clear here. And it shows the human cost the family left wondering, the public divided.
A talent lost, and questions that just linger for decades.
It really makes you think about the limits,
Yeah.
the limits of the legal system when the evidence just isn't clean or wasn't handled properly. Can legal justice always align with perceived truth? This case suggests sometimes not.
A heavy one. Definitely leaves you with a lot to consider.